Well, first, Admiral Crane, thank you for having us here today at SUNY Maritime College. And thank all the Waterkeepers who are here. You know, I love this guy. You never have to worry about what's going on. I work in countries all over the world, on every continent, on energy issues, and AIDS and malaria issues, and development issues. And we're always talking about, I just took on this job in Haiti, we're always talking about how we need more transparency in government. You will never find a more transparent public figure than Robert Kennedy. And almost nobody in this audience is as old as I am, although I am glad to see that my demographic has not been entirely eliminated from this group. But I have to tell you, I was looking at him and I thought, that's the way his father made me feel 40 years ago. I came by my interest in clean water, honestly. I was born in Arkansas, and when I was 6, I moved to a town called Hot Springs. Thomas Jefferson sent a friend of his to Hot Springs from Mississippi in the same year that Lewis and Clark set out on their expedition, because he had heard that the sulfur springs contained miraculous quantities, qualities. Fernando de Soto came there in 1541 and saw the Indians bathing in these steaming sulfur springs and thought he had discovered the fountain of youth. Alas. In 1832, Andrew Jackson signed a bill which made my hometown the first land ever set aside in the United States as a national reserve. It was the third national park created after Yellowstone and one of the other big parks out west. But it was preserved by our country since 1832, so I grew up in this national park where we had the government protecting our precious water. We were surrounded by 3 lakes. 2 were essentially privately owned and operated land. There were no restrictions. 1 was part of the National Forest, the Washita National Forest. It was one of the 3 cleanest lakes in America. You can see the bottom of the lake when I was a boy working there at summer camp, 35, 40 feet, clear as day. The other, where most people lived, and where my uncle lived, and where I learned to drive a boat and ski, and where we all fished, was one of the most polluted lakes in America. President Carter started trying to clean them up, and when I became governor of my home state, we finished the cleanup of the lake I grew up on, and Jesse and God knows what. So I've always been interested in this. I think it's important. When I was president, we set aside 14 heritage rivers, beginning with the New River in North Carolina, which is the oldest known explored river on the East Coast. We identified 20,000 lakes and waterways that we wanted to clean up, including many that had been totally given up, and they can, as all of you know better than I, be brought back to life. We imposed more civil penalties, fines, on polluters than any administration ever had. That's really what you were talking about in your... I figure if you have a law and you don't enforce it, you don't have a law. But if you never enforce these environmental laws, which is basically what we were up against, a very weak enforcement, or people wanting to have 1 or 2 high visibility cases a year so they can check the box, instead of thinking about all the fish that were dying from, among other things, discharges from utility operations, then you're not going to have a real law. Congress might as well not have passed it. So I thank you for what you're doing. I say all that, so well, what does that mean to us? The thing I love about what you do is that you do. There's a lot you can do. So doing is important, and what you need to keep doing what you're doing. But you're here talking about clean energy and its relationship to clean water. If we don't change the way we produce and consume energy, you're going to lose this battle. Every one of you can file a new lawsuit every day and you can win them all, and we'll lose the battle because the whole mega structure is closing in on us. So here's my observation about that. I went all the way to Stockholm, Sweden the other day to give a speech on a panel with Tony Blair and the great Kenyan Nobel Prize winner Wangari Maathai. And Wangari is a ball of fire, and she got to give a great talk. And Blair's a great speaker. He got to give this beautiful speech, and he has a very good record on this. The UK is one of only 4 countries that's going to meet their Kyoto targets, for sure. They'll for sure meet it. The UK, Sweden, Denmark, and one other, I'll think of it, Germany. Now the #1 producer of solar energy in the world, Germany, and the whole country's average sunlight equal to London, England. And #2 in wind after us, though it's much smaller. There might be 4 other countries that meet their Kyoto targets. That's the max. Nobody else is going to do it. So anyway, and Tony Blair talked all about this conference that's coming up in Copenhagen. And I'm glad the Danes are going to host it in December to see if we can get a post-Kyoto agreement that the U.S. will be a part of, and that we can somehow find a role for China and India and get them involved in this process. And he was great. And I was the last guy, I was the cleanup hitter, so I said, look, I love Tony Blair's speech, I have nothing to add. I came all the way over here to tell you one thing. Unless you have a vote in Copenhagen, or a vote in your local legislative bodies, you should not come to any more of these meetings. Because we're all just preaching to the saved. Instead, you should go home and do something that proves that this is good economics.